Good evening, everyone. Dr. Ashi, can we start?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Yeah.
So we have 175 participants so far. Should we wait for or should we start now?
We should start.
Okay, ma'am. A very warm welcome to all the participants for day 2 of the reviewers workshop. And today, as ma'am said, this is the session, the season 2 of this workshop that we had started last year. And we were very encouraged by the response that we got yesterday. So we'll start first, as and when we wait for more people to join in. We'll probably have the feedback of yesterday's sessions by Divya ma'am. Divya ma'am, could you please tell us about the feedback for yesterday's session?
Yeah. Really exciting to see. The excitement is on both the ends. We as organizers are very happy to see. And the excitement is also there with the participants. So yesterday we got about 193 responses. And how do you rate the sessions in terms of content? So majority have said 7 to 10. So something about 8 to 10 is a score. So that's good. How do you rate the delivery of sessions? Again, we have got scored well from 8 to 10. So people are enjoying the session. How do you rate the relevance of sessions? And people feel that it is relevant, as 68 people have responded on 10. So that's good. 35%, 32% says 63. 63 people have said that we have scored 9 on that regard. So that shows the people feel that these sessions are really relevant. And it's very exciting to look at the aha moments. The question and answers were great. The importance of reviewers, uh, it was good to know. Giving brief of all the content. Peer review course as a whole, as a suggestion, is really good. Reviewer role, people got to know, understand the role. Various platforms, Google Scholar, how it reflects all the articles, knowing about various other identifiers, knowing about different IDs, information about certified peer reviewer course, Scopus. So all those things which we discussed, uh, people have shown that it was really good for all the participants, and the message sent was quick and clear. So that's good. For the suggestions to improve, people have asked if we can give them a real picture. So real scenario, yes, we'll taking that suggestion and we'll incorporate that in our in next few days. So we'll be taking you to the live process as well. So that's about the feedback. Predatory journals, we are as such not talking about. So yes, within 10 days, we'll try to incorporate as much as we can in the review, everything about the reviewers and how to improve as a reviewer in our career path. So that's about the feedback. And that also brings me to today's poll. So I need to launch. Can you see the poll?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So this poll is for you to please select the best option. Maybe you have been registered on various platforms previously. So which have you been using? Orchid, Publons, Reviewers Hub, Google Scholar, or ResearchGate? So you may respond now. Please vote. Please vote for the question 1. The questions are being viewed, but I don't see anybody opting
We have done, ma'am. We have opted.
They are doing it.
Responding. They are responding.
Okay. I can't see on my screen.
I have responded.
Okay. We move on to the next question. So how many of you all were motivated enough to register yourself on these portals yesterday? So just after listening, how many of you tried to log into these if you were not already logged in onto these portals? So please vote for question 2.
Can I request all participants to please mute yourself? Dr. Kishore Yadav, can you please mute yourself? Thank you.
Richa, are people still voting? I can't see.
Yes, people are voting, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, people are still voting.
55% have voted.
Okay. Let me know when to end the poll.
Yes, ma'am. I'm still 60% have voted. Many are still joining. Maybe that.
I'm 46 out of 252 have voted so far.
Okay. So let it remain open. Can we do that?
It will not go on from the screen.
Okay. I think by that time, Ashi, if you can introduce the speakers till the people are.
Yes, ma'am. Today's first speaker is Dr. Sachin Rai, and his topic is how to become a reviewer and what do editors expect. So Dr. Sachin Rai is a very dear friend, colleague, senior, and is an oral maxillofacial surgeon. He's also an additional professor at the reputed Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research, Chandigarh. He completed his BDS in 2000 and MDS in 2003 from King George Medical University. And he joined PGI in 2004 as senior resident. He was also nominated for the Commonwealth Scholarship in 2008 by the Ministry of Human Resource Development, and has been awarded the AOCMF Fellowship by the Hanover Medical Hospital, Germany in 2015. He's presently the Vice President of the IDA Chandigarh branch, and areas of interest include craniomaxillofacial trauma, pathology, and 3D reconstruction. His unit at PGI was the first in the country to use PSI, which is patient-specific implant, successfully in 2015. He's an active reviewer, researcher, and is also the section editor for trauma and reconstruction for the Journal of Oral Biology and Clinical Research and craniofacial. And he is a very avid researcher and is a very avid publisher. So it's important that we hear it straight from him, because he's also an author himself. He's also a reviewer, and he's also an editor. So he plays different roles at the same time. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Sachin Rai, please. Sir.
Thank you, Ashi. Ma'am, are we done with the poll questions?
We have about 27% of people who voted in, 74 out of 268. So I'll request everyone to please finish the poll as soon as possible. Let's not waste time on that. Otherwise, we miss on the sessions. So we'll hold on.
And we can also do that at the end of the session, ma'am. By the time when we are discussing things, we can put the questions on the screen, and then we can.
I think 70% have already voted. I can see on my screen.
You are muted.
We can end the poll and see what the response is. I'm really excited to see if people were motivated enough yesterday to log into these. I don't see.
Yes, ma'am, we have the poll results.
Okay.
So the first question was, in which of the following reviewers platforms were you registered before this workshop? So a maximum of 66%, that is 128 participants out of 193 were already registered in ORCID. The second most were on Google Scholar, that is 63%, 122 out of 193. So they're on multiple platforms, but ORCID and Google Scholar and ResearchGate also 59%, Publons 21%, and Reviewer Hub 5%. In which of the following, second question was, in which of the following reviewers platforms did you register post 1-day session of reviewers training workshop? So that is in response to what we did. So 40% logged on to ORCID, 24% went on to Publons. That is 77 people out of 193. That is more than 1/3.
That's really good.
Actually went in and registered in ORCID. 47 out of 193, 25% went on to Publons. 25%, 45 people went on to ResearchGate. 59 out of 193, that is 31%, went on to Google Scholar, and 49 out of 193, that is another 25% went on to Reviewers Hub. So that's a very encouraging response to what you were trying to find out, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Ashi.
So I'll close the poll, ma'am.
Yeah, please.
So over to you, Sachin, sir.
Can I share the screen, Ashi?
Yes, please.
Just let me know when it's there, right?
We can see it.
Yeah, we can ask all the participants to please mute yourself. And if you have any questions, please type it in the chat box. And we don't want any interruptions when the speakers are speaking. So we would request you, if you have any questions at that very moment, please type it in the chat box. And we will unmute you during your question answer session, please. Sachin sir, please carry on. We can see your screen.
Okay. Thanks, Ashi. A very good evening to all the viewers. On the behalf of the organizing team, I welcome you to the season 2 of this reviewers workshop. We have seen tremendous rise in online enrollment and participation this year. Nothing has changed much since last year, when we conducted this in June. And we have tried to improve on the content of the workshop and added few more speakers, more illustrious speakers that you'll see in the next few days. My presentation would be mainly my presentation will be briefly outlining the process of can you hear me, Ashi? Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you, Dr.
The presentation for the next 20 minutes will be briefly outlining the process of how to become a meaningful reviewer and what does the editor expect from us once we enroll for this particular job. Prior self-assessment, which only you can do for yourself, and then editor's expectation, the part 2 of the presentation, in context of response to invitation, response to conflict of interest, unethical issues, first read, the second read, writing comments to the editor and the author. I'll be more concentrated on the first read in this particular presentation. The second read, which is very important in context of the type of the manuscript, will be taken over by other speakers in the next few days, which you will come across. So the first point, why become a reviewer, or otherwise, why you shouldn't become a reviewer. The positive points first, widens your horizon for research. This is the most important aspect. If you are an academician or you have a love for academics, one should get into these sort of jobs. And and these kind of papers you come across gives you perspective for your own good. You get ideas, you can modify your ideas, You can see the latest trends cutting across the scientific world. And then you can improve upon your research methodology, your writing, and your editorialship. Second point, sense of duty towards fraternity. Why it shouldn't be like that? Don't we love our association? Don't we want our association to improve upon? Don't we want our journals to improve upon their citations, their impact factors? Isn't it a proud feeling for us if your association or our journals score high internationally? Who would do that? We would do that as part of the fraternity, right? It's our sense of duty which should prevail in us to improve upon the particular journal or the fraternity in large. New technologies, drugs, methodologies. The science is a daily changing subject. You come across new things every day. You can't have them all in your own world. You can incorporate ideas of whatever age or seniority you are. All this adds to your knowledge. What's the flip side? It's a full-time commitment. It's a full-time job and it's an unpaid job. It takes a lot of efforts to be a committed reviewer, committed editorial board member. Yesterday, I was coming across the chat room chats where there were a lot of discussion about financial gains or financial increments for these kind of jobs. It is something a kind of unrealistic situation where you'll be paid for these kind of jobs. At least in India, it's not economically viable for journals to pay you for a reviewership. It's only your love for the science, your own branch, which drives you towards these kind of jobs. Nothing else. Okay, so make up your mind before you enter this world of reviewing or editing a particular manuscript, and then start moving. If it's just a fad for you, just because your colleagues are doing it, believe me, the fever won't last long. After 2, 3, 4, 5 reviews, you'll feel bored and you will slowly get out of the system. How to become a reviewer? The background, right? The background was created much before even you could notice that. Most of us are postgraduates who are into academic world in colleges, institutions, where we are either teachers or consultants. During our post-graduation, we have written dissertations, library dissertations. We have conducted journal clubs. We have read papers. We used to collect landmark articles in our system, hard copies or soft copies. We used to review
Sachin
journals.
sir, sorry to interrupt you. We can see a black line in the middle of your presentation. Is there any way you can remove that?
I'll try, Ashi. I'll try. Just a second.
Or if it's a problem, you can carry on. No problem.
No, it's okay. Give me some time. Yeah, there's a line. I can see that.
I think you can stop sharing and again open your presentation.
That's what I'll do, ma'am. That's what I'll do.
It's fine now, sir.
Hello.
Yes, we can see you and we can hear you. Dr. Sachin, please carry on. Your slide is fine now.
So yeah, sorry for the interruption. How to become a reviewer? The background. I was saying that we all have done our post graduation, most of us, right? So we have the right background. We have written thesis. We have come across journals, good articles, bad articles, strong evidence, weak evidence. We have the basics of how a thesis or a paper is written, right? We all have mostly published papers during PG or post PG phase. So that is the background where you gain a lot of knowledge regarding how to write a paper and then how to get it published. You can always approach your mentor, your teacher. You can review a paper and then ask him or her to check on it. Yesterday, I heard Varun from Elsevier. He was talking about certified peer review courses. There's something which is very wonderful and which was not present before a few years before. Now, this is something where you can go to these platforms, get done with the course and have a certificate. There are other options, other venues, post-publication peer reviews. A lot of journals have this facility. For the published articles, your reviews are invited and the editor gives you a feedback regarding your review. How to become a reviewer? The easiest way out is to approach the editor, either through an email, meet him or her in various scientific events. There are conferences, workshops, and various symposiums. You can directly meet the editor. Believe me, we are still looking for good reviewers. There's a lot of dearth for good reviewing. Trust me on that. You can ask any member of the editorial board. So highlight your area of interest, previous research done, publications, running research, and projects.
Sachin sir, can we go on full screen, please? Thank you.
Okay. Fine.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. So the own, the editor will himself or herself search for you and invite you to review a paper. So let your work do most of the job. As I said, prior self-assessment is the most important aspect of reviewing, right? This is the only thing which only you can do for yourself. Nobody else can do that. A Latin proverb, who is custodiet ipsos custodes, who will guard the guards? Or in our case, who will judge the judges? Who will review the reviewers? Who is judging your work? Only you, yourself. So what is the background? Are you ready to review an article? How many papers have you written yourself? How many systematic analysis have you done? How many meta-analysis you have done? How many original studies have you done? Clinical academic experience to review, years of work. Now that doesn't mean that youngsters cannot go into this field. If the homework is proper, anybody can have any age, young or senior, can get into reviewing. Research work, have you conducted it yourself, your own research work, dissertations, project conducted? Area of interest, does it match your work profile? So if it's a cleft journal and I'm not into primary cleft, why would I accept a paper to review and cleft surgery? It's not ethical, right? Just because of the heck of it, or I know the editor or the editor has requested me and I don't want to say no to the editor, why should I say yes? It doesn't lie in my area of work or area of interest. So prior self-assessment is very important. When you receive a manuscript for review, the most important of all the points is, can you deliver in time, reply promptly, accept or decline, avoid delays. The most harassing situation is when the reviewer says yes and keeps sitting on the manuscript. We encounter that on a daily basis. You say yes because you want to be in the good books of the editor, and then you keep sitting on the paper, and that pisses off the editor more actually. So be honest on that. If you don't have time, you are a busy clinician or an academician, or you are on a vacation, say no, write it clearly, avoid delays. It's very frustrating for the author, for the editorial board to wait for a review beyond the expected time. Does the manuscript fall in your domain? As I said, does it fit into your area of interest? Check for conflict of interest. What does that mean? A paper has come from your own department, from your own colleagues, or you are conducting a similar research. So that is a conflict of interest. You have to write that I can't do that because I'm working on a similar project. So the first read, right? Outlining a decision. The very first read, it starts the moment we get a mail from the editor that we invite you to for this review. And here lies the importance of a good abstract. That's what every journal, every editorial board says. The first thing which we would read is the abstract, nothing else. If the abstract attracts us, we'll have a positive beginning, and then we will go further with the review. So for the authors, abstract is very important. The initial impression, right? The first impression is the last impression. And get a sense of what eventual recommendation would be. Sorry. Okay. The first read would flag potential major flaws, ethical concerns, approvals, trial protocols followed. Now, this is almost mandatory. Clinical trial registries, ethical committee approvals. We need that on paper. The number should be there in the manuscript. Length of introduction, methodology, and discussion. Headings and subheadings. Would that attract the reviewer for a better read? Quality and number of pictures. Believe me, nothing pisses off more a reviewer than a gross picture, a bad picture, or a blurred picture. That destroys the whole of the work done in writing the manuscript. Take a mental note of the positive aspects that can be communicated to the author. This could help them with the future submission. Other duties which the editors expect from the reviewers is communicating malpractice in context of the methodology, the writing, suspected plagiarism. Now, the job has been done easy by a lot of softwares which are already installed in the editorial system. You already get a certificate from the board when you get a review paper, telling us the number of percentage of plagiarism done in that paper. I don't remember how much we expect it in here in GeoBCR. In my institute, it's 8%. Then any fraud which you suspect, unattributed work, unethical procedures, ethical issues, human trial protocols have been followed or not. Duplicate publications, you have come across a similar publication in some other journal. This can happen at times. Bias or other conflict of interest. Non-reproducible methodology. Science has to be repetitive, right? And contribution of authors. At times, the authors' names are not blinded, and you can see the institute and the names of the author. A lot of us have the habit of putting names of people who are not directly involved in the writing of the manuscript or conduction of the study, which is not a very good practice, because these things are quite obvious to the editorial board, and that puts the writer in a negative platform. The language of the reviewer is important, right? Because you don't have the control on the language of the author. But when you have to review a paper, you have to put across a message to the editorial team, to the author. Your English should be good. Your English should be scientific, so that there could be a chance of improvement. If the editor or the author is unable to understand what exactly are you trying to put across, how would they improve on the manuscript? The whole purpose of reviewing is to make a average manuscript better and make the better win the best, right? If the language is poor, but the core message is delivered, suggest way of improvement. If a manuscript has many major flaws in language, do not try to fix it. It's not your duty to check for grammatical errors. I have seen a lot of reviewers who do that. It's a waste of time. Just mention that the grammatical errors are high or the syntax errors are high, and the editorial board should, or the author should look into them. Mention it in the review. Don't keep on correcting all the grammatical mistakes line wise. Just the content, not the language. Shaping a review. How do you shape a review? Treat the author's work the way you would like your own to be treated. Be polite, honest, and clear. Now it's very easy to say that, but it's very difficult to implement because because most of the time we get a lot of bad papers, which really puts us off. But then you have to be polite, honest, and clear. Be objectively critical. Don't be subjective. Don't hit it upon the author. Hit on the methodology or the results, and be critical objectively. Review should ultimately help the author improve the article. It should not be subjective or destructive. Don't demoralize the authors. Remember the first manuscript which you had written when you were just a fresh pass out, right? So remember your time when you are reviewing somebody's other's work. Use easy language so that it can be understood by the people whose first language is not English. Now this is very common in our country. A lot of us authors don't have a very good command on English. We come from different backgrounds. So if the language is not appropriate, you can suggest. There are a lot of softwares now. Grammarly is one I know, which takes care of all the grammatical errors in your manuscript. There must be many more now. So there's a lot of facility or help available now. So you can tell them to the authors. Number the points and refer to page and line numbers in manuscript when making specific comments. Writing a review, summarize first. The first few lines should be, I have received this manuscript, title this, manuscript number this, which studies, compares, or does checks the efficacy of this particular drug. Okay, am I audible, Rashi?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay. Then start with major issues, minor issues, criticism and confidential comment to the editors, the authors. Then comes the recommendation part, acceptance, revision, or rejection. Have a constructive feedback, offer clear suggestions for the author, which they can address and concerns raised. In other words, if you are going to raise a problem, provide a solution. Tell a way out. In major issues or flaws, has similar or contradictory work already been published without the author acknowledging this? Now, this is a common scenario. If I have to propose a method which I feel like is very good, I won't put in references where the studies have contraindicated this particular method, right? So you have to, that's a major issue. Is the evidence present strong enough to prove the case? Is there a comparative study? Is it a non-comparative study? Were the parameters objective or subjective? Was the criteria strong enough to check upon? If major revisions are required, try to indicate clearly what they are. Are there any ethical issues? If you are unsure, it may be better to disclose these in the confidential comments section. You don't have to write it to the author, just mention that to the editor so that he can further check upon it. Minor issues, any ambiguous statements, how can this be corrected? Ambiguous statements meaning a same statement carrying a contradictory meaning, right? So that can be corrected. Maybe there's a grammatical error or a syntax error in that. Are the correct reference cited? If not, which should be cited instead? Or also, are the citations excessive, limited, or biased? You are quoting one particular author and not quoting the authors which are against the method which you are dealing with. Are there any factual, numerical, or unit errors? If so, what are they? Are all the tables
Dr.
Nobody
Sethi, please unmute yourself. I had to mute all.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yeah.
Yes,
Am I-
you're
Okay. Are all the tables, figures appropriate? Are the diagrams, are the photographs correct within the scientific domain of the journal? If not, say what exactly is lacking so that improvement can be done. Criticism and confidential comments to the editor. Highlight any malpractice such as suspected plagiarism, fraud, unattributed work, unethical procedures, duplicate publications, bias, or other conflict of interest to the editor. Do not criticize about the manuscript. Authors cannot see this feedback and are unable to justify it. Write comment to editors as though authors might read them too. So when you are highlighting the flaws, do that so that both of them can read it, the author and the editor. While acceptance is in your mind for accepting a particular manuscript, don't just give a short cursory remark such as great and accept. Reveal the now this is important for the editorial board, right? Reveal the contribution of the article to the journal specialty if published. How is that going to benefit the reader, primarily the young reader, right? So highlight that. Recommending revision is the most common scenario. A recommendation for major or minor revision is typical. If recommending revision, state specific changes to be made, expecting rebuttal from the author for each point. So make a point-wise critical appraisal so that the author can reply to you in that particular point-wise manner. Be clear in the comment to the author or editor that are important if the paper is given an opportunity for revision. Now rejection, right? Most of the time rejection is something which we I think the rejection rate is high in context of good journals. While rejecting, give constructive feedback describing ways that they could improve the research. Keep the focus on the research and not on the author or his or her institution. Some journals offer option to recommend rejection with the possibility of resubmission. This is most relevant where there is substantial major revision is necessary. Avoid making critical confidential comment to the editor while being polite and encouraging to the author, who may not understand why the manuscript has been rejected. So objective criticism is very important. And also they won't get a feedback on how to improve their research, and it could trigger an appeal for re-revision. So after the first read, even if the article has serious flaws, read the whole paper. Don't just put it down after reading the introduction. You may find some really positive aspects that can be communicated to the author. This could help them in future submissions, even if it is rejected. For example, if it's a non-comparative weak study, tell them to put a second control group or comparative group so that the evidence becomes strong for that method, for that technique, for that drug. Now that is a positive feedback with rejection. A full read through will confirm the initial concerns and provide the context of the manuscript before deciding to reject. If accepting, a second read will help to improve the final draft for the benefit of the reader, journal, and the author. Because if the article goes into print and then some flaws detected by the readers, it falls on the editorial board, and that is not a very good thing for the journal. So have a second read before you accept the article for further process. To summarize my presentation, summarize what the paper is about, indicate the significance of the work, and if it is novel or mainly confirmatory. Put the findings of the paper into a context of the existing literature and current knowledge. Give positive feedback first, indicate the work's strength, its quality and completeness. State any major flaws or weakness and note any special considerations. For example, if previously held theories are being overlooked. Before framing a decision, take a second read. It will make sure that any initial concerns are correct and fair. The second read is very important depending on the type of the manuscript. As I said initially, on that will be covered by various other speakers in the next few days. So that brings me to the end of this presentation. I'll end it by saying that wisdom and common sense come from within, and we are all more helpful than the knowledge that you gain from outer environment. Use your wisdom, your intuition, your common sense to improve the manuscript, improve the journal. If not you and me, who else would do that? The editor-in-chief cannot do everything. It's a contributory team effort, and it lies on us what exactly is the way ahead for the journal. Thank you for a patient hearing.
Thank you, Dr. Sachin, for your talk. Very informative. I hope it has benefited the participants. Can we take some questions now, or would you like to take it
Yes,
later?
please.
After?
Yes, please take. Please,
Okay.
few questions here.
Right. So we've got a few questions in the chat box. Those who want to speak can raise your hand, and we'll unmute you one by one. So the first question, Dr. Sachin, is from Dr. Krishnangi Yagnik. And she says, sir, would like to know more about the conflict of interest.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Conflict of interest is primarily if you come across a paper from your own department, your own institution, or you are working on a similar project, right? And or the funding body is same. Your
Right.
funding body and the manuscripts, the other funding body is same. Then these are potential conflict of interest primarily. There could be secondary, and I request Dr. Divya to add a few if I'm missing something on it.
No, I think, Dr. Sachin, you have covered a lot. The topic conflict basically means that the same area of work, the same department. So you should not be claiming other, maybe you are having a bias. To prevent that bias, it's good to declare your conflict of interest initially only. So that's about it,
Right.
I think.
Professor Imran Khan asks, we do get approx 2 to 3 weeks for review of any paper. Is it okay we send in our comments in the last few days? So what he means, if we get 2 weeks to answer a question, so by day 12, is it okay to do that, or would you like an early response?
It's perfectly all right. 2 weeks is the legal, the official time you have. So take your time, do a good review. A good review is better than an early review, which is done in a hastily manner.
Right. I think Divya ma'am would like to add to that. I think she likes an early response as soon as possible. A good and early response is.
Yes, I would say that if you can do it as early as possible, because ultimately the fate of the article is to be published or rejected. So if it has to be rejected, the author comes to know earlier, and then he can improve upon it and then publish elsewhere. Or if it has to be improved, then basically, if you have the time to review, please do it as early as possible. Otherwise, you have a legal time, as Dr. Sachin said. Yes, that 14 days time is there, but if it is possible for do an early review, it would be good.
It makes the job of the whole editorial team much easier. Dr. Yasoda, can you please mute yourself? Thank you. So it makes the job of the entire editorial board team much easier if we get an early response and we get an early review. So
don't make it a habit of doing it in the last 2 days. Don't do that. Once in a while is fine, but yes, as rightly said by the editor-in-chief, don't make it a habit.
Sometimes it does happen that the last day you are not able to do it, and then the editor is stuck up.
True.
Yeah,
that's a very common scenario.
Then we have to re-invite. We have to then re-invite you later on, because there is no system of sending you review for the review again. So we have to uninvite you and then re-invite you. So that's a big job then. So I would recommend that you finish as early as possible. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Aisha.
The next question is, can we do a first read and then accept to review if it pertains to our field of interest, or reject if not? So I think what the question means is, can you do is there a possibility of doing a summary of a read or a review of the read before you actually accept it?
Of course, you can. You can download the paper, have a read, or check the abstract as well. The abstract can give you a very good idea if you want to do the review or not. But you have you have the choice of downloading the article, and then if you are unable to do that, tell the editor you can't do that. It's perfectly all right. You can do that.
Right.
I think you will be able to access the entire article once you have agreed. Unless you agree, you will not get access to the article. So you get
there's
the
no-
abstract.
Okay.
Yeah, you will get the abstract to read. So if
Okay,
reading
fine.
the abstract, you find that it is within your work frame, so you would like to accept or means decline to review
Yeah,
based
fine.
upon the abstract.
Sorry for that.
The next question by Dr. Pankaj Goyal. In some articles, the author can choose the reviewer who may be known to him personally. Does this constitute conflict of interest?
Lot of journals provide this facility. Lot of journals provide this facility, but it seldom happens that we send the papers to the reviewers which you have suggested. It's your right to suggest the reviewers, but it's our own right not to send the papers to those reviewers. It certainly puts a question mark, puts a bias on the whole manuscript.
Divya ma'am, how would you explain that the feature of adding a reviewer onto a? I mean, that person obviously would be known, so obviously there might
Yes.
be a conflict of interest.
Yes, we never
Why
use.
is that done?
We are never using those suggested reviewers because that will bring in a bias. That is only the last resort we have. If we have sent the article to various reviewers and everybody has declined, and we are just extending the review process and we are not finding an appropriate reviewer for the journal, in that worst scenario, we opt to choose the reviewer recommended by the author. And then also we have to ensure that we have to have a diversity in our reviewers. So that could be one choice, but the rest 2 or 3 reviewers we have to look from outside. So of all the 2 reviewers suggested by the author, we could maximum take 1.
Right.
Okay.
I think everyone again. Someone seems to be having a lot of fun alongside. So, the next question is, in case if the review process becomes unblinded and if there is no conflict of interest, is it okay to continue to review or should we decline it?
Sorry, say again.
The question from Professor Imran Khan is, in case if the review process becomes unblinded and if there is no conflict of interest, is it okay to continue to review or should we decline it?
Then it's perfectly all right. As I said, a lot of international journals send you the complete paper. You come across the author's name, the institution's name, and then you have all the right to review it. It's totally your. Am I audible, Ashi?
Yes, please.
It's totally your prerogative to review it or not. As I said, self-awareness and your own wisdom prevails above everything, actually. Nobody's going to question you on that. Nobody can question. A bias is a subjective thing, right? Most of the time. So it's just your own wisdom, what you want to do. Ma'am, do you want to add something?
Most of the time, the reviewers are blinded. Means they never, in our journal, they never come to know who is the author, and the author doesn't know who is the reviewer. So both ways it is blinded. In most of the reputed journals, it's such.
Right. Okay, there's a question from Dr. Santosh Kumar. What should we write in comments to the author and comments to the editor sections in specific? I could also add to that is it required to that we always give comments to the authors and to the editors if you're a reviewer, or is it okay if you just reject them? Dr. Sachin?
See, in all practicality, most of the time what the reviewers do is they write a similar set of sentences both to the editor and to the author. They copy paste it from the editor. Most of the reviewers do that. It's okay till the time the message is passed on for improvement or for the betterment of the manuscript. It is fine that both the things could be common. As I said, if you're suspecting an issue, a conflict of interest or some unethical work, you just cannot point out that to the author blatantly without confirming it. That you can write to the editor, and then you can discuss it with the editor. Improvement of the manuscript, the methodology can be said both to the author and the editor. Does that answer your question?
Right, yes, thank you. Then the next question is, sir, sometimes the reviewing article was similar to the article in some journal, but the author says it has been checked for plagiarism. What to do in such an instance? This is very similar. You would have also noticed that a similar article would have been published earlier. A few words have been changed here and there, and it's being resubmitted. So the author says it has been checked for plagiarism. It has already come to you as a reviewer. So you're not supposed to do a plagiarism check, but when you search the net, there is something similar. So what
that's what I said, Ashi. Most of the now we get the plagiarism report along with the manuscript.
True.
So most of the job is done is easy.
Right.
Few days back, I got a manuscript with a 75% plagiarism. So the reviewer highlighted that to me as an editor that this is not acceptable, right? And then there were flaws in the manuscript, so we rejected it.
Yeah,
So it is there. So you don't have to run the software for plagiarism. That's not your job. You can write it to the editor, flag the manuscript, and the editor would do the needful.
That's what Dr. Puneet Dhar also adds in and says that most journal sites have plagiarism checks built in. So that is a feature that we have mostly on our Elsevier portal as well.
Institutions have it now. You have
Institutions have it as well as we have it. We have a inbuilt flag check as well, right?
There are two things in the system. One is plagiarism. So along with the manuscript, when the manuscript comes to the editor, you can see on the left-hand side panel that there is so much of plagiarism in this manuscript. The other thing which is there is the duplicacy report. So maybe the author himself or the team of authors, someone else was the first author or the corresponding author. The similar article has been submitted to the journal site. And so there is a duplicacy alarm as well. So there are two things. But it is denoted on the reviewers editorial panel, and you don't have to do it. You don't have to check it yourself. You just see the report.
Right. Thank you. Dr. Sonal says, what are the expectations from a reviewer for the extent of statistical analysis of the results? Divya ma'am, would you like to take that?
See, the part of the manuscript, the methodology of the study design, that is the majority of the work to be done by the reviewer. But in case there is massive stats and the reviewer is not knowing of all those things, then the letter from the reviewer to the editor may say that I've looked into the methodology part, but I would request you that please check with the stats with the community person or statistics or epidemiology person. But having said so, we also look for reviewers whenever we feel that the article needs a person from epidemiology. We make sure that one of the reviewer is from epidemiology.
Right, thank you. Dr. Vinay Kumar asks how much emphasis should be given by a reviewer regarding the ethical clearance for any manuscript, and does it always? What he means to say is it always a prerequisite for the manuscript?
Yes,
now it is a prerequisite. Ma'am, you were saying something.
No,
sorry.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
For clinical trials, for human trials, even for animal studies, it's a mandatory prerequisite by most of the institutions in India. So you have to get it registered in the clinical trial, and you have to get a certificate from Institute Ethical Committee, IEC.
Right.
Anytime the editorial board can ask you for that, or your manuscript can be rejected if you don't supplement in the manuscript with
Ma'am, is it true that even for retrospective studies, you need an ethical clearance before it gets published?
Yes, you either need a ethical clearance or a waiver. So the first thing the reviewer should be looking at in the article is that the ethical clearance, the legality part is taken care of.
Right. The next question is, a part of that has already been answered. I just asked the part, please show some light on how to decide that a research is a weak research. That is basically based on your own assessment as a reviewer. It will be very difficult
Exactly.
to explain that here at this point of time. The second part of the question has already been answered. Dr. Himanshi Agarwal is who should do the plagiarism check? Editor before sending manuscript to reviewers, or it is the reviewer's job to check plagiarism? This has already been answered. There are already inbuilt black checks in the system, and it is sent to the reviewers after the black check is done. So not all journals send plagiarism report. Well, there are variations, and it varies from, but the general thing that we are seeing in the journals that we review for, the black check is always done, and it is sent to the reviewers after a black check. You also have certain black checks which you can do online for free of cost, but there's a word limit to it, and there are certain restrictions for it.
I think we should move on with the second speaker.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Yeah, we're almost done. One last question, if you allow me, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Reviewer suggestion or comments regarding adding some of portion and manuscript, and if they also give reference, of any published article, is it fine or unethical practice? I did not get this question.
You can quote an article with a reference. You can suggest improvement to author by checking this particular published article, and then you can do that. You can do that if it is not your own article. Avoid doing that.
Right. Dr. Vivek Gupta and Professor Imran Khan have their hands raised, but they've also asked questions on the chat box.
Yeah, can I ask one question if I'm allowed, please?
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, very good evening to all. Professor Sachin, Professor Divya, ma'am. Ma'am, my question is, in case if you're getting a review, manuscript, and you have already done some significant work on that field, on that topic already, and that manuscript is not containing your work citation. So should we recommend to the editor, can we as a reviewer, that this citation is missing?
It's a bad practice to recommend the reviewer to quote your article, the reviewer's article. But you may suggest that few important articles which are published on this subject have been missing in your reference. Kindly look for them and add them. That way you are sending them that message that some have been missed, and you please. It's not a good practice for the reviewer to quote his article to be included, and it is not taken very well in the ethics.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Ma'am, just before we wrap up, ethical clearance is required for in vitro studies as well?
In vitro. For what? It's ethical clearance is for human trials, but then in vitro
trials, yeah.
experiment, if you are doing animal studies, you would need ethical approval.
Yeah,
for
the question is not very clear. So yes, if that, yeah. And the second question, is it necessary to obtain IEC certificate for a meta-analysis or a systematic review?
Waiver, I suppose a waiver from the ethical cell.
Yeah, because we have submitted a few, and we have taken clearance from the ethical cell as well.
It's a good practice. One should practice that.
Yes, that's what we do here.
Send a letter to the IEC and let them handle the situation.
Yes. So
their own people, your own faculty colleagues. So involve them, let them know what they are doing.
True.
Think it like that.
Right. So I think we'll wrap up this part of the session today, and we move on to the next speaker. Thank you, Dr. Sachin, for your extensive talk and engaging question and answer session.
Thank you, Ash.
We move on to Dr. Ankita Chugh, who's our second speaker for today, and she'll be taking a talk on how do editors look at your paper. Dr. Ankita Chugh is a dear friend, colleague, and oral maxillofacial surgeon. She's an additional professor at AIIMS Jodhpur, and is an avid writer, researcher, publisher, She's also the section editor and for orthognathic surgery for the JOBCR, and plays a very active role in the day-to-day affairs of the journal. So I'd like to hand over. Dr. Ankita, are you here with us?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Thank you, Ashi. Thanks for the introduction. Good evening, one and all. Without delaying it further, we are already running late. Anyone who has ventured into this publication process, whether as an author or as a reviewer, would surely know that editors are the main gatekeepers to it. And this Sachin sir has beautifully covered the peer review process, but it's only if the editor is satisfied enough that your manuscript will reach to that peer review state. So I'll just share my screen and start with my presentation. Ashi, is it seen?
Yes, we can see your slides and you're audible as well.
So now we know that editors are the important guys in this process. And if we go through this whole process, except the peer review component, starting from your submission to the final draft modification, everything else is being taken care by either the chief editor or the team of his other editors. Peer reviewers are no doubt the basis for this science. They are actually the consultants who recommend what is right and what is wrong to the editor. But the final decision always lies with the editor. And we'll see in next few days that why is it so. And secondly, since yesterday we were talking about what incentives should be given to the reviewers, even in that aspect, it is the editor who evaluates what kind of review has been done. So my topic is, how do editors look at your paper? After listening to all this, it is very normal for an author to feel that between you and your accepted paper, it is the editor-in-chief with his team and the peer reviewers. That is very obvious to think it this way, but believe me, it is not true. Editors and his team basically are partners to us in creating a good and authentic science. Only thing is, we need to know or understand what are editors thinking. If I have to soothe out the impact of editors, a single line would suffice, that is, editors themselves are in the business of publishing and not rejecting manuscripts. That means they do need manuscripts. Only thing is, they are looking for the good ones, or in fact, the best ones. Because an editor of a good journal receives hundreds of manuscripts in a day, which is much beyond the number that he can publish. So he has the privilege to be a good chooser. But despite that, good editors and good journals, even if they are not going to publish the work in their journal, as Sachin sir said, by providing a good review, and in many other ways, they actually are improvising the science of this publication. And if we see how editors think, the most important or the key thing at the back of our mind when editors first looks at your manuscript is, it is novelty and appropriateness. The topic has to be new. Anything which is just reproven will not be attracting an editor of especially of a good journal. And appropriateness means it has to be appropriate in terms of its hypothesis, in terms of its content, in terms of the methodology, the way it has been done, and the way results have been presented, along with the presentation writing skill also of the paper. So it has to be new and appropriate in a nutshell. And getting a new thing, all these things written in red are the recommendations by editors or the complaints or the regular flaws that editors have found. And most of the editors recommend, think about the topic first. You need to give a good thinking to get some novel idea, which will obviously increase the chances of your publication. So deep-rooted thinking is the first thing that is required if you wish to publish in a dream journal. Then how do they check for novelty? Novelty does not mean an understudied topic always. Not everyone can be Newton or Einstein. Other ways of creating a novelty can be an uncommon method as well. We all have seen that there was a phase when after RCTs, lots of systematic reviews and meta-analysis came. They were so much into the journals that then people started thinking there could be a way of analyzing these systematic reviews as well. So the tools like MSTAR and all came. So you have to think a way ahead. Your different analytic method can also be a novelty. Or we have been doing some surgeries for years, like ankylosis is a bread and butter. It's a major chunk of any hospital-based surgery in an institute especially. But last night only Sachin sir had posted, he got 3 articles published, their institute got 3 articles published in premier journals just by looking at the quality of life aspects of those same treatments that they were doing it for decades. So changing your study design, changing the way you are looking at your work can be a way of creating. Then many a times, even the negative results are welcome. We all are aware of the good cholesterol, bad cholesterol, fat and ghee theories. Now, even only thing about negative or newer perspective of any known results is the methodology has to be really robust. If your methodology, if there are no ethical flaws, if there are no other issues, then even negative results will get published easily. So when the editor has cleared the novelty part of it, he knows it's new and different, he then sees, is it focused to his journal or not? If it is a craniomaxillofacial journal and if I wish to submit something on minor oral surgery on third molar, it is obvious that it would be rejected within few hours of my submission. Then editors, just at looking at your own references, can make out whether it is relevant to their journal or not. If it is a pure biology journal and you are submitting a surgical technique, then it will be a big no-no for him. Similarly, then if I sit somewhere in this Western Rajasthan and I wish to publish something about Western Rajasthan and I aim for a big international journal, then obviously I have to be realistic in my approach. So editors recommend that do read the aims and scope of the journal where you are submitting before going in for it. Then when it is within the scope, then he generally sees what is the writing skill, what is the pattern. They don't want some flashy or flowery English. They want most of the readers should be able to comprehend that manuscript. They don't want their readers to be using a translator or a dictionary to read that manuscript. So it has to be simple, sweet language with short words and short sentences. And a lot of grammar mistakes and punctuation mistakes are expected if you use long sentences. And this is one which no editor would like to see. Then, as Sachin sir was also saying, we have to consider the base where what is the reader base to it. You don't have to publish it as a thesis. You have to make your presentation too concise and concrete. And after going through the first look, like the first read by the reviewer, if the editor is able to justify why did you start, what did you do, what answer did you get, and what do you mean to present in a simple language, if he is able to get all these things, then he will surely move on your manuscript to the next stage. And for this, most of the editors recommend develop your reading skills. Read frontline scientific journals, try to see their style, approach, and the clarity that they present. Then next that editors do look at is cover letter. Before the last year session, when we prepared for it or when we listened to our colleagues, my standard cover letter used to be to the editor, journal name, and dear sir, I would like to submit this article in your esteemed journal, kindly accept. But after listening to the last year's session or the season 1 of this workshop, after preparing for it, we realized that this kind of cover letter is not too attractive, at least for an international reputed journal. Your cover letter, just by reading your cover letter, you can project the uniqueness and or why your study should be even considered for that esteemed journal. It's a way to do that. So at that point in your cover letter, what is unique or what is different that the editor should include your study for consideration. But do not paste your abstract there. Then next thing is title. Remember, title is one thing which at times, even for months or years ahead, you may not, your abstract may not get projected everywhere, but your title would. So your title itself has to be self-explanatory. Like an example, what are the effects of protein energy malnutrition on school children in Delhi? This seems to be a little unfocused. If we read more of good articles, we'll realize that a better way could be, how does protein energy malnutrition affect academic performance in elementary school children in Delhi? So this way you are specifying what your article focuses to. You are narrowing it further. So this will attract more of the audience for it. Then the title has to be interesting, but need not be provocative. It should not be made provocative, especially with the intention to get it accepted. It won't happen. Like the one example is given, a rose is a rose is a rose is a rose. But exactly what is gastric adenocarcinoma? Though it's a PubMed accepted article, but it was one of the mocked articles by the editor that such kind of titles are not preferred. Then your introduction should be brief. It should cover both the background, a little about background, and what your paper is going to do. What is your hypothesis that your introduction should be able to cover? Then methodology is the most important part that editor looks through. He wants to know whether the methodology has been correct. Suppose if you're putting up a RCT and you don't mention anything about blinding, you don't mention anything about the randomization, how were the subjects divided, or what were the real method followed, then it puts a question mark on the whether your manuscript or whether your work has been authentic or not. So your methodology has to be concrete, not too much detail, but major headings or aspects should be covered. Then results. Just looking at the results of your manuscript, if they appear to be flowing logically, if all the questions or hypotheses that you have raised were reflected to be answered in your results, will give a positive boon to the editor. Then your figures and tables, they should be self-explanatory, and don't try, we all feel, especially as beginners, we feel that the more number of colored figures or graphs will make our manuscript attractive. It is not. There should not be a duplication of the information in your text, tables or figures. It should be just presented once. Then discussion is the most important thing that editor grossly looks through. And it is important even from the point of view of a reviewer. It has to be broad, but as Sachin sir said, you need to, even a reviewer needs to check whether both the contradictory things of that same topic has been presented or not. There could be situations in which there is a company sponsored project and the author has tried to hide the confidentiality aspect of it, and he has presented only the positives of that project or that instrument, or that could be any drug. If as an editor or as a reviewer, just seeing one side of the story should create a suspicion in the mind of editor, and then the literature can be checked on the other common sites, PubMed or Google Scholar, and the information can be verified. But the alternate views, the contradictory problems or the controversies should be addressed in the discussion. If you just see one side of the story, then you need to surely check or see the authenticity of the manuscript. Then references. If there are two old references or only one side of the references or controversies are there, that again is a warning sign. Then one thing that most of the editors of big publishing houses have accepted is with a p-value, with not getting a significant p-value, not getting the desired results, if you try to prove a causality to your study, that is a highly unacceptable thing. Some editors said it took 15 years for the first study to prove that smoking caused cancer. And if someone with a sample size, with a poorly done RCT, with a sample size of 20, 30, if he wishes to say that it would be the cause or it proves that this is the cause, will not be a good thing in the eye of an editor. So before jumping to prove your causation, be wary of your results and methodology. Then whether most of the journals, in fact, few of the journals, before finally submitting your manuscript, ask you to tick whether you have read the author instruction sheet or not. And most of us as authors directly take it or click it. But it basically, every journal has a different writing style, their fonts, their instructions can be different. And most of the times we don't tend to follow them. And this annoys the editor. In fact, there was an editorial in which common famous editors had written about the complaints or the flaws that they see. So somebody had pointed out that many times, even in the revision file, they tend to see the original file. In the cover letter, instead of their journal name, the previous journal name was being carried on. So these are the flaws if we don't see or follow the instructions given by that journal specifically. And these things make, if your manuscript is not of a very good quality, and such flaws when combined will make the editor less tolerant to all these things. And it is not a single flaw, but usually a combination of many problems that lead to a rejection. So editors recommend that before submitting, read it loud or tell your manuscript as a story to someone. If a layman or if another person is able to understand what you are projecting, it increases your chances that the editor would also be able to. Many, as we said, that editors get a lot of manuscripts each day, which is beyond their publication scope. Journals like Elsevier have a desk rejection rate of 30 to 50%. Some journals even have a rate of 80 to 90%. So we don't want that desk rejection to be done. We want at least our manuscript to reach to the next stage. So rejection without review is one which author will not like to have. And even editor tries that is done to the minimum, at least for an article which is not terrible. If the editor feels that it's not terrible, but he knows that it is unlikely to be accepted, then also to improvise the quality of the manuscript, he does send it for the peer review process. And in this way, the editor helps the author as well as this whole publication science, because the review received can help you improvise on your manuscript to be submitted later to some another journal. And this one way of doing it is the cascading peer review, in which the journals only these days recommend another journal B, where you can, if you wish, you can submit your manuscript there, and the whole of the manuscript along with the review process review done is being transferred. This way, the duration of the second review process becomes short. And again, this helps the authors a lot. This was the first part, how editors looks at our papers. Editors, as I said, do look at the review that is being done as a reviewer. And they expect a good quality review, especially if the quality of manuscript is low. But there are a lot of problems with the current review system, and the purpose that this reviewer workshops or the standardized certified courses are being generated is because of these problems, because there is a lack of objectivity and the reviews tend to be really non-standardized. There was a study in 2016 in orthopedic literature in which they said 12 of the major good manuscripts by famous authors, which they resubmitted those 12 studies to different journals and believe that out of those 12 studies, when they were submitted again for the review process, only 8% of the reviewers could make out that this is a resubmission. This is a study done in 2000, maybe then it was not so easy to check the duplicacy part, as Divya ma'am was saying, but only 8% could do it. So out of those 12 studies, 9 studies underwent the whole review process again. And out of those 9 studies, 8 studies were rejected, saying that the methodology is inappropriate. See, there can be so much of inconsistency in the review process. Another study done by Neurosciences Journal accepted that only 11% of the reviewers' comments match between the two reviewers in the same journal. And when that same manuscript is being sent to some other journals, the matching of these reviewer comments could go as high as 20%. And even considering the final result, whether it should be accepted or revision or rejected, that match was also just 30% among the different journals. So this reviewer process needs lot of standardization. So the purpose of this reviewer workshop is we need to understand our roles as reviewers significantly. It has all been covered by Sachin sir, so I won't take it any further into it, but just writing it is not good or it should be accepted is not enough. You need to provide the problem along with the solutions. I just have a few examples. A comment was given, the paper was clear and concise, but the editor have recommended that instead of writing this clear and concise, this comment no ways help the editors. So what could have been helpful? He said, it should have been written that this piece of work is rather well and coherent. It is able to address the main areas that article requires. I like your title. It is short and clear. You have used the scientific terminology and the students will be able to understand. So that means you have justified how did you find the paper clear and concise. This way, the editor is able to rely on the reviewer comments really well. Another example quoted by another editor was that do not write just the negative comments. Some comment was given that more needs to be written about fish species and the background material. What editor recommends or what he expects as a reviewer to write is, he can write that the background information is clear. He should start it with a positive comment, even if he feels that there is an inadequacy in the comments or in some section of the manuscript. But we need to start it with a positive note. We can write that background information is clear, but it seems to be short though. Maybe adding a sentence like this, adding on strategy, on service or client will improvise it. Then you can also add further comments that if you introduce or add these lines or take these quotes or take these references, it will add further. So basically, just as a reviewer, you are not expected to just evaluate. You have to present the methods in which it has to be improved as well. Then only this whole reviewer process will strengthen the publication or will help the editor in making his or her decision. So you are expected to give a meaningful theoretical contribution to the reviewing process. This also Sachin sir has covered. There are various ways of presenting a review. You need to be summary. Summary will tell the editor clearly that reviewer has read and understood what the study or manuscript was about. Then you can give your recommendation along with the major comments and the minor comments, addressing each aspect of the manuscript and preferably in a numbered form so that it is easy for the author also to address the issues back. So if I have to summarize, I would say that editor expects a detailed planning from the protocol step itself. You should take care of the details that editor expects of the ones which we have discussed now. And as a reviewer, your job is to give a evaluation which is detailed and responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ankita. If you're ready, can we take the questions? Yeah, so Dr. Surinder Sodhi asks, what are the responsibilities of an editor to write the editorial?
What are the
Responsibilities of an editor to write the editorial? I think Divya ma'am can answer that better.
Yeah.
I think relate to the current issues. Sorry. So if you can relate what is going on, so if you can write on the problems you are facing as a reviewer, as an editor, or the work which is taking place, relate the current scenario and to make the people aware of these circumstances. So relate it to the current system.
Right, Dr. Selva Kumar Jayaraman asks, as an editor, is it always the editor who gets blamed for the rejection of an article?
Actually, editor makes his decision on the basis of the reviewer comments. But the problem is at times he or she is not very happy, or if the reviewer comments are not detailed enough. So there comes a situation he himself or she himself has to go through it, or will even have to invite some other reviewer. If the reviewers are recommending, then it is very unlikely that the editor would reject. If all the reviewers or both the reviewers are recommended, it is unlikely that an editor would reject it. But if there is a contrasting comments by the two reviewers, then it lies with the wisdom of the editor to take the final decision. Divya ma'am, I think can add on to it.
I think you have said it correctly, because that's why we prefer to have multiple reviewers as well. There are circumstances when we get one reviewer saying accept, other reviewer saying reject, then we have to send the article to a third person to review, and maybe third person says accept or review. Then the editor also has to put wisdom into this article and see what is the gut feeling of the editor. Means, is it worthwhile to be accepting it or not? So then comes the role of, I'll be talking about what are the various forms of reviewing as well on some day. And I'll let you know how we can also go ahead with a collective reviewing. So sometimes it may happen that the three authors have given an opinion differently. Then we may call all the authors if the article to the editor looks such appealing that it should be discussed upon, then the reviewers may be called upon and discussed on the topic. So that's how the final the decision is taken.
The second question that is asked is, in some journals, it asks the reviewer to give comments to the editor and author. In the comments, what should be covered or given? What the question says is what comment should be given to the author and what comment should be given to the editor. That is what they want to know.
Yeah, I think Sachin already discussed about it. Yeah.
Ankita, would you like to add to that?
just that the confidential comments, or if you suspect anything, that should be conveyed to the author, to the editor. And secondly, an important thing is there should not be a discrepancy between what you convey to the author and to the editor.
Right.
If you are doing a good review, and if you have evaluated it, or if you have pointed a lot of mistakes, and at the end, if you give a rating of 80, that will not be acceptable. It has to be a match. Whatever you write, you cannot be you cannot try to be a good guy in the eyes of an author or the editor. Anyways, it is not acceptable. You have to be true to the facts.
Right. The next question is Dr. Sujal Parker. Can we publish thesis or project with one or more different sections or results? That means generating one or more papers from a single project or thesis. That means splitting one study into various studies and then publishing them separately. So is this okay?
Salami
Or?
publication kind of a thing. Ma'am, you would be able to comment better on it.
See, what is your aim? Your aim is to have number of papers, or your aim is to have a quality paper. If you want to have a good publication in a good journal, then you have to publish the whole thing together. Then only it will be appealing to the editors. If you split it into multiple pieces, and then you will be sending it to some small journals only. So what you are aiming for, if you are aiming for the numbers, then you can split it, but it is always better.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'm Dr. Sujal Parker.
Yes, please.
My aim is like, we cannot publish the entire thesis or a project in one single paper. Like say, for example, if I'm doing quality of life in some head and neck cancer patients.
Yes.
So first my part is to validate the questionnaire, and then I'm comparing with other variables like socioeconomic.
Yes.
So I can divide my project or a thesis into two. First is validation of my questionnaire, and next one is the comparison with socio-demographic and all.
Yes.
So my again
See, the main aim whenever we are saying that a good thesis is, we plan the thesis in such a way that at least 2 to 3 publications are generated
Exactly.
out
Yes.
of one thesis. So
Yes.
this is year 1. So there would be some work which is being while the year 1 you are doing review. So first printing of article could be on review. It could be
Fine.
systematic review. It could be so first year publication could be on review. Then the next year the experimental phase starts. Now you have to do the experimentation part. You have to publish that. But if you are trying to split the publication part, the experimentation part into multiple, then it is a problem.
Okay, ma'am.
Using that same database or the data result.
Yes, ma'am. Exactly.
Considered
So
ethical,
what will be the
basically.
methodological part? Because methodology will be the same in all the articles, all the papers. Or if, for example, if I'm
Maybe
if I'm
it can be
taking-
presented as part 1 and part 2. You can request the editor to do it in part 1 and part 2.
If it is long, yes. But
Okay.
then first is review, second is methodology part. You can publish the protocol, and then third could be your experiment. That's how the thesis can be split into 2 or 3 articles.
We have Dr. Puneet Dhar who would like to take a question, or ask a question, please, sir.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to make one comment. Like, I think a very valid point was raised that we shouldn't give a very negative comment also to discourage. I think many editors don't want the other extreme as well. So especially if it's slightly controversial, you don't want the author, when somebody asks what's the difference in the reviewer, comment to the reviewer and comment to the editor. So if it's something is very good to you, but since it's being sent to 3 or more reviewers, you might have contradictory reviews. Somebody might find it terrible. So it's a good idea not to show your hand completely. Put all the good points there, and you can say to the editor separately that I think it's a fantastic study or whatever, especially if it's a controversial issue. So both extremes we should avoid. Sorry, just wanted to,
You're probably
Yeah,
being
thank you.
diplomatic about your statement at the same time, not being too averse to.
yeah.
Negative-
So
negative.
because if you praise it too much and it's rejected, it might be an issue. It's like
Yeah.
an examiner saying, "Oh, you're doing very well," and then fails a student.
Yeah.
Very true, very true. But what we as editors recommend is that you have to look for the strength of the article. So every person has some good quality. Similarly, every article would have something, some strength. So you have to catch that strength, write the strength, then the weakness, then the way it could be improved. There are possibilities that the methodology is wrong and there's hardly any chance of improvement now at the time of publication. So just point out the strengths and the weakness, and if there is any chance, any way how it can be improved. So the reviewer comments have to be very constructive.
Right.
If you can improve it, fine. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Puneet sir. The next question is from Dr. Vivek Gupta. Please tell us about desk rejection. So desk rejection is
Desk rejection, as we said, the number of articles received is much beyond the publishing capacity of a journal. And to ease out or to reduce the burden onto the reviewers, as such, also getting a good reviewer or getting a timely reviewing done is very difficult task. If you keep on sending all of those to the reviewers, the whole system would go to a standstill. So desk rejection is what the editor looks at it, the points that we have covered today, and based on that, immediately sends it back. The advantages of desk rejection are the load onto the reviewers is reduced, plus the authors also get to know the result quickly. The only drawback is a desk rejection usually does not comment onto the lacunae or positive things. It does not comment anything about your manuscript. So that is the biggest problem with the desk rejection. But then it is a part of this publication process, considering the big number of manuscripts that every journal gets.
Divya, your take on it?
Yeah. So if I talk about JOBCR, every day we get about 35 to 40 articles, and it's not possible to look at all the articles. So what we look at the first go is the title. So is the title depicting any novelty? So any approach? So if there is any mention of, yes, it is worthwhile to take up a read. So like the cover page, the book has to be appealing. So if you feel that it is, yes, worthwhile to take a dive into, then you process the entire article and send it to reviews. Otherwise, routine, repeatedly, the same thing is coming. It won't go to the review process. It would be directly desk rejection. And every good journal aims to have the best. So that is the opportunity with the editors, that they can choose what is best for their journal. And we'll be talking what is best for the journal later on. But yes, once we know that this article comes into the 20% of articles to be accepted, then we process it. If it is in the routine 80%, JOBCR tends to reject it directly. So 80% is the rejection rate for Journal of Oral Biology and Craniofacial Research. And that depends only on the title and the abstract, the first look.
Right, ma'am. One of the last questions for today is, does the editorial board have a right of gifting authorship to an author? So that is answered also in the chat box. We have another question coming in. A few journals ask for the names of 2 or 3 reviewers, that is for Reviewers Bank or to review the submitted manuscript. In that case, doesn't it generate a bias or conflict? It's something we discussed earlier, but you can probably summarize it again.
So we ask for reviewers' names to add up to the reviewer bank. Maybe those reviewers can be used for other articles of a similar type, but not for the particular for which they have been recommended.
Right. As you mentioned, different journals have different policies. So our journal does not use the reviewers that have been suggested for the review process, because that would obviously lead to a bias. But certain other journals do that. That is a journal to journal decision. So that does happen. Yes. Any more points or anything that you like to add, Dr. Ankita or Dr. Divya, ma'am, please?
I think we have covered a lot today, and very good speakers, Sachin and Ankita, have deliberated on the topics very well. We are already running late, so we'll ensure that next day we are more in time. Sorry about getting leaving you all late. So we won't take much time now, and I think we should finish off. And I would request Richa, if you can put in the chat box the MCQs and the feedback. You'll have to, all of you will have to copy paste it from there, from the chat box. Till the time Richa is giving you the link for the MCQs for today, may we all have a video on and take a group picture. Please, all of you. I think many of you will have to use this picture taking job because not all of us will be visible in a single screen. So I'm taking from mine and then we can share them along. So did we get the link? Ankita, are you sharing? Let me see. Okay, otherwise we'll put it in the WhatsApp group if it's not coming here. There are a few questions and a feedback. Please don't mind taking feedback on a daily basis. This is something we require to improve.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
My video is stopped, so I
Sachin, can you also take picture at your end? Richa, could we manage to put the link
Done,
here?
ma'am. Done.
Yes, ma'am, I've taken one or two,
Okay.
but
The
many
link. The link.
switched on their. Ma'am, Google form I've posted on the chat.
Okay. So please go ahead with the few questions and see you tomorrow, same time. Thank you everyone for joining in.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks everyone for
Bye
joining.
bye.